Hey, it's Ashley from Smart Addition Academy, and in today's video, we are going to go through a Kaplan Nursing exam practice test for math. Okay, so I'm going to go through a bunch of questions. You can follow along while I solve them. You can find a link to this practice exam in the description of this video, and you can also find links for our online Facebook study group, our other practice tests that you can take, and our full online course. Okay, so we've got some questions to do together today. So go ahead and buckle up. Let's get started. So we're going to do 28 questions together. Okay, let's solve for the value of x. So for this first question, this is a ratio question. So what this says is 5 is to 6 as x is to 84. So this is just saying that these ratios are the same. So I'm going to set up a proportion. So 5 over 6 is equal to x over 84. So you can write those as fractions. So from here, in order to solve this, oops, let me move this out of the way so you can see me. So here, in order to solve this, I would probably cross multiply and then solve for x. So 5 times 84, then you get 420, and then 6 times x. And then we just have to divide by 6, and we should get 70. X equals 70. So that would be the value that would make this ratio consistent. Okay, let's convert meters to yards. Okay, so we need to know a couple conversions for this question. So we need to know that 1 meter is equal to 3.28 feet. And we also need to know that there are 3 feet in 1 yard. Okay, so we essentially want to convert from meters. And before we can go to yards, let's convert to feet first. Okay, so let's use this first conversion. So 9 meters is equal to 1 meter is equal to 3.28 feet. So 9 meters is equal to how many feet? So we're going to take the 9 meters and we are going to multiply by 3.28. Okay, this is going to tell me how many feet are in 9 meters. So take that, when we multiply, we get 29.52 feet. So there are 3 feet in 1 yard, so we have to take the 29.52 and divide by 3. So when we do that, we get about 9.84 yards. 9.84 yards. Cool. Okay, let's add some fractions. 3/8 plus 5/6. So whenever we add fractions, we need to have a common denominator. So I see 8 and 6. One thing you can always do is multiply the denominators. Okay, so we can do 8 times 6, which is 48. I also know that these share a different multiple, though. I know that 8 times 3 is 24, and 6 times 4 is 24. So I'm going to choose 24, but if you chose 48, you would just have to do a little more simplifying, and you should get to the same answer. So again, 8 times 3 is 24, so 3 times 3 is 9. 6 times 4 is 24, so 5 times 4 is 20. So 9 24ths plus 20 24ths is 29 24ths. 24 goes into 29 once with 5 left over. So 1 and 5 24ths should be our answer. All right, let's check out this word problem. A nurse is instructed to give a patient 1.5 liters of fluid while they recover from a medical procedure. How many milliliters will the patient receive? So we need to take our 1.5 liters and turn it into milliliters. So there are 1,000 milliliters in a liter. So all we have to do here is multiply by 1,000. So that is a really great conversion to memorize. That comes up quite a bit in our practice problems for this exam. So we just have to multiply by 1,000 and we would get 1,500 milliliters. Okay, if m equals 3 and n equals 6, then solve the following equation. Okay, so we have negative m times n, which is in parentheses here. So let's plug in our values. M equals 3, n equals 6. So this is negative 3 times m is 3 and n is 6. So worry about my parentheses first. 3 times 6 is 18. And negative 3 times 18 is negative 54. A negative times a positive is always a negative. So negative 54. All right. 2 times 3/4. So in order to multiply a whole number times a fraction, you can think about this as just 2 over 1. And now we can just do what we normally do for fractions, go across the top and across the bottom. So 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 4 is 4. So 6/4. Looks like I need to turn my answer into a mixed number and simplify. So 4 goes into 6 once with 2 left over, and then 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2. So 1 and 2/4 is the same thing as 1 and 1/2. And there we are. Okay. According to a shipping company's records, a worker dropped a few boxes and damaged 18% of candles and glass decorations for a particular order. If the shipping company was responsible for 250 candles, but 600 decorations, how many total pieces of the product did the worker break? Okay, so they damaged 18% of candles and decorations, and we want to know how many total pieces did the worker break. So I'm going to find the total. 250 plus 600 is 850. Okay, and now I need 18% of that. That's how many that they broke. So turn it into a decimal, swoop to the left twice, right? So 18% is 0.18 times 850. Okay, so when we multiply that out, we should get about 153 total pieces that were broken. Write 12.5% as a fraction. Okay, so a lot of questions on our practice exams are going to talk about percents, decimals, fractions, being able to convert between all three of those things. So 12.5% as a fraction. What's the best way for us to do this? Maybe let's turn it into a decimal first. So it's pretty easy to go from a percent to a decimal. So let's swoop this to the left twice. So this is the same thing as 0.125, which is also 125 thousandths. This is the thousandths place. So 125 thousandths, writing that as a fraction is pretty easy. 125 over 1,000. Okay, now the hard part here is figuring out how to simplify this. So if we want to simplify this all in one step, we can actually divide each of these by 125. So that'll make it nice and easy. So when I do 1,000 divided by 125, I get 8. So this is the same thing as 1/8. Okay, what is the product of 10 to 3 and 40%? Before I start working on this problem, I'm going to look at my answers, and they're all in fractions. So if I can turn these two, I have a ratio and a percent. If I can turn them into fractions and then find the product. So remember, product means multiply. So I'm going to multiply these two things. So 10 to 3 is 10 over 3. And I'm going to multiply that by 40%, which is the same thing as 40 out of 100. Remember, percent means out of 100. So 10/3 times 40 over 100. So I could just multiply across the top and across the bottom. And this would just be 400 over 300. Divide each of those by 100, and I'll get 4/3. So 4/3 is our answer. Okay. 3 friends go into a sandwich shop and purchase the famous 3-foot-long hoagie sandwich. The friends overestimated how hungry they were. One friend ate 1/6 of the sandwich, while 2 other friends had 1/4 each. How much of the sandwich remains? All right, so we have a 3-foot-long hoagie sandwich. Notice that all of our answers, again, are, this time they're in inches. So sometimes it can be helpful to look at your answers to know how to get started on this question or know how to do it at least in a quicker way. So because this is in feet, I'm going to convert this to inches first. 3 feet, that is 36 inches. So 1/6 of that sandwich, right? 1/6 of 36. So 36 divided by 6 is just 6. So this friend ate 6 inches. 2 other friends ate 1/4 each. So 1/4 of 36. 36 divided by 4 is 9. So each of these friends ate 9 inches. So now, if I add these together, 6 plus 9 plus 9. Okay, 6 plus 9 would be 15, plus 9 more, I think that should be 24. Okay, so they ate 24. And if you look at what the question is asking, it says how much of the sandwich remains. So 36 minus 24 will give me my answer, which should be 12. They should have 12 inches left. Okay. A teacher buys 4 bottles of water for class. Each bottle of water contains 3 liters. Each cup holds 2/5 of a liter. How many cups can be filled? So we have 4 bottles of water. Okay, each bottle contains 3 liters. So 4 times 3 would be 12 total liters. This is a 3. 12 total liters, and each cup holds 2/5 of a liter. So we need to take the 12 total that we have and divide it by 2/5. Divide it by how much each cup can hold. So a whole number divided by a fraction. This is really just 12 over 1. So we should be thinking keep, change, flip. Okay, it might help to think about fried chicken like KFC, but we're thinking KCF this time, which means keep. So keep this one, 12 over 1. Change, division and multiplication, and flip to 5 over 2. Okay, and then we can just go across the top. 12 times 5 is 60, and across the bottom, 1 times 2 is 2. 60 divided by 2 is 30, so they can fill 30 cups. Okay, 67 out of 210 is approximately what value as a percent? Okay, so 67 out of 210 is really just 67 over 210. So we want it as a percent. So let's just divide to figure out what it is as a decimal. 67 divided by 210 is 0.319, and it kind of goes on from there. I'm just going to round to 0.319. So in order to turn this into a percent, we just swoop it to the right twice. So 31.9%. So that is approximately 32, right? That's our closest answer. So 32%. A nurse must administer a total of 5,000 milligrams of medicine to her patient, but is instructed to only provide 0.25 grams of medicine every 2 hours. How many doses will the patient receive? So they have 5,000 milligrams, and we're giving them doses of 0.25 grams, so 1/4 of a gram every 2 hours. How many doses will they receive? Well, let's take our 5,000 milligrams, turn it into grams. Okay, so we talked about this conversion before. Now there are 1,000 milligrams in a gram, so we have to divide by 1,000. So this is the same thing as 5 grams. So let's take our 5 grams that we have in total and divide it by each dose, 0.25. Okay, so 5 divided by 0.25 should give you 20 doses. 20 doses. Okay, so how many doses will the patient receive? They will receive 20. All right, let's subtract fractions. 15 sixteenths minus 3/8. So it looks like, since I need to find a common denominator, 16 will be a good denominator to choose because 8 times 2 is 16. So this one, we can actually keep the fraction. And now let's convert 3/8 to something over 16. So 8 times 2 is 16. So we have to do 3 times 2, which is 6. So now we can just subtract 15 minus 6, which is 9, and keep the bottom. So 9/16. Okay, let's solve x squared equals 225. Okay, so one way to do this question, if we don't have a square root function, is to just check and see which of our options work. So if we're saying x is 5, that would be 5 squared. So is 5 squared equal to 225? No, 5 squared is 25, right? 5 times 5 is 25. So it can't be this one. We could check 10. So 10 squared, does that equal 225? Should know that one pretty well, right? 10 times 10 is 100, so nope. And then how about this one, 15 squared? So if I plug in 15 times 15, I will get 225, okay? And because it is something squared, it's always the positive, but also the negative, because negative 15 times negative 15 is also 225. What is 70% of 50? So 70% of 50, I would just turn this into a decimal. So swoop it to the left twice. So this is the same thing as 0.70. And then you just have to multiply it by 50 and you'll get your answer. So 0.70 times 50, I believe should be 35. Okay, so here's a mixed number divided by a fraction. So we are going to think of fried chicken when we divide fractions, KCF. But before we do that, let's turn our mixed number into an improper fraction. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 6 is 13. So 13 sevenths divided by 3 14ths. Now we can apply KCF. Keep our first, change division to multiplication, and flip to 14 over 3. So in this question, I could just go across the top and across the bottom and then simplify. I'm going to show you a quick strategy that can help us simplify before we actually solve the problem. It's called cross-canceling. So because 7 and 14 share a factor, right? They're both divisible by 7. I can divide this by 7 and this by 7. And now I can multiply across the top and across the bottom. And it's a little bit easier to simplify. So 26 over 3, we need to turn into a mixed number. 3 goes into 26 8 times. That would be 24. So we'd have 2 left over, 8 2/3. Okay, so cross-canceling can be a strategy that can be really helpful in order to simplify it ahead of time and not have to worry so much about simplifying those fractions at the end. All right, let's change 7 and 13/20 to a decimal. So I know I'm going to have a 7 in front of my decimal, my ones place. Now to find what's on the other side of my decimal, 13/20, I can just do 13 divided by 20. So 13 divided by 20 would be 0.65. So this would just be 7.65, 7 65 hundredths. Okay. Trisha put $1,800 down on a new car and paid $375 a month for 6 years. How much did Trisha spend in total for her car? So Trisha put $1,800 down. Okay, and then we're going to add her monthly payment. So she pays $375 a month for 6 years. So every month means she pays 12 times a year, right? There's 12 months in a year, and then she does that for 6 years. Okay, so now in order to simplify this and solve, we can multiply, and then we'll add 1,800 to that. So when we multiply 375 times 12 times 6, you should get 27,000. And now go ahead and add your 1,800 to that, 28,800. So she's paid $28,800 in total. In a state, the highest elevation is 1,450 feet and the lowest is -80. What is the difference in elevations in feet? So thinking about what the word difference means, that means subtract. One thing we could do is just take 1,450 minus -80. Okay, minus a negative. Make sure you subtract a negative here. And really that just means add. So we could just add these together. It also might be helpful for some of you to just visualize what this means. So a high elevation, let's think about like a mountain, okay? So this is saying that this mountain is 1,450 feet above sea level. Now, the lowest elevation, maybe this is a valley or something like that down here, is -80. So we're going down 80 more, right? So say this is whatever, like sea level right here. So notice how we need to add these together to find the total, to find the difference from the top to the bottom. So visualizing it could be helpful if you did not see right away that we had to subtract the negative, right? So always good to just check and make sure your answer makes sense too, so that drawing a picture might be helpful. All right, let's multiply some fractions. 2/3 times 4/15. Okay, so pretty straightforward. We're just going to multiply across the top. 2 times 4 is 8. And across the bottom, 3 times 15 is 45. 8 45ths. Can't simplify, so we're done. Okay, a patient needs 0.5 grams per day for one of his medicines. How many milligrams per day does he need? Okay, so I hope you're noticing what conversion comes up a lot. We're a lot of the times having to go from a whole unit to milli, like milligrams, milliliters, something like that. So we should be thinking there are 1,000 milligrams in a gram. So multiply this by 1,000 and you will get 500 milligrams. 500 milligrams. Write 7/9 as a percent. Okay, so when you see fractions, just think of division. This is really just saying what's 7 divided by 9. That's all that 7/9 means, 7 divided by 9. So when I do 7 divided by 9, I get 0.7777, right? It's 0.7 repeating. So to turn this into a percent, I need to swoop it to the right twice. So this would become 77.7 repeating, right? The 7 repeats over and over and over again, percent. So 77.7 repeating percent would be our third option. Okay, so we've done quite a few different questions with addition and subtraction of fractions. So this might be a great question for you to pause the video and give this a shot. 1/3 plus 11/12. Okay, if you're doing this along with me, looks like 12 is a multiple of 3, so we can just leave 12 as our denominator. So 1/3, 3 times 4 would be 12, so multiply the top by 4, and when we add these together, we get 15/12. So now let's turn this into a mixed number. 12 was in a 15 once, 3 left over, and I can turn this into a more simplified fraction by dividing the top and the bottom by 3. So 1 1/4. Okay, a little bit of algebra here. X over 4 plus 8 equals 6. Okay, so let's get rid of this 8, subtract 8 from both sides. So we have x divided by 4 equals 6 minus 8 would be -2. So to get x by itself, I have to get rid of the dividing by 4, so I'm going to multiply. So multiply each side by 4. So -2 times 4 would be -8. So x has to equal -8. The number 25 is 5% of what value? All right, so the quickest way to do this is to take 25 and divide it by 5%, which we need to turn into a decimal, 0.05. Okay, this is the quickest way to do it. Might not be the most straightforward way to do it though. So something that always works when we're finding percents of a number is to use a proportion. So I use that proportion, part over whole equals percent over 100. So I can just plug in what I know and solve for what I don't. So the part is 25 and the whole is what I don't know. I'm trying to find of what number, so let's just call that x. Equals the percent is 5 over 100. Now I can go through and cross multiply and try to solve. So if you are to do that, or if you are to just take 25 and divide it by 0.05, either way, you should get 500 as your solution. So 25 is 5% of 500. Okay. If Daniel owes the bank $36,000 for his student loan and pays $750 towards the principal each month, how long will it take for Daniel to pay off his debt? Daniel does not have to factor interest rates into his payment because he works for a company that pays off student loan interest for up to 5 years. Okay, so he owes $36,000 and he pays $750 per month. How long is it going to take him to pay off? Okay, so let's just take our 36,000 and divide it by 750, okay, and figure out how many months it's going to take him. So when we do that and divide, you should get 48 months. So 48 months, and we know there are 12 months in a year. So if I just do 48 divided by 12, this actually works out nicely. This would just be 4. So it would take him 4 years to pay off his debt. All right, we have made it to our final question. Let's write 83.3 repeating percent as a decimal. Another great one for you to pause the video and try on your own. We've done a couple like this. If you are doing it along with me, what we have to do is just swoop our decimal to the left twice. Okay, so 0.83, and how we have it written like this is 0.833 repeating, but this just means that this 3 repeats over and over and over again. So what we can actually do is write it as 0.83 repeating. So 0.83 repeating would be our solution. Okay, so I hope that you found this video helpful and that you are feeling more prepared for your Kaplan nursing exam. Thank you so much for following along with me. Don't forget to check out the links in the description of this video and give us a like and a follow if you found this helpful. All right, can't wait to see you in the next video. Have a good one.